I was horse Cartwright practically all the time. But once I got it, and once I knew the fella, and he was indelibly stamped, then I could leave him alone and go get him when I wanted him.
Dan Blocker was one of the most loved television actors of his time, best known for playing Hoss Cartwright in the famous Western show Bonanza. At first glance, his life looked steady, successful, and peaceful. He had fame, a strong career, a loving family, and millions of fans who admired him. But behind this image, his life had many different chapters that shaped who he was before he became a television star. His story is not only about success, but also about hard work, simple beginnings, and a sudden tragic ending that shocked the world. Dan Blocker died at a very young age, just when his life still seemed full of future possibilities. His death was unexpected and came after what was believed to be a routine medical operation. This shocked not only his family but also his co-stars and millions of viewers who had watched him for years on television. For many people, it felt like losing someone they personally knew because his character had become part of their weekly lives. After his death, people began to look back at his life with more attention, trying to understand the man behind the role. His wife, Dolphia Blocker, also became part of this quiet and emotional story. Unlike many people connected to Hollywood fame, she chose not to stay in the spotlight. Instead, she stepped away from public attention and focused on her family and privacy. This decision made their story even more private and respectful, but also more mysterious to the public. Dan Blocker's life can be seen as a journey from a small-town boy to a national television star, and finally to a sudden and tragic ending that no one expected. His story remains powerful even today because it shows how quickly life can change, even for someone at the peak of success. Dan Blocker was born on December 10, 1928, in a small town in Texas called DeKalb. From the very beginning, he was a large baby, much bigger than normal, and this became something people remembered about him throughout his life. He grew up during the Great Depression, a time when many families in America were struggling with money, food, and work. His parents worked hard to take care of the family, but life was not easy. At one point, they lost their farm and had to move to another small town called O'Donnell, Texas. There, his father opened a small grocery store, and the family lived behind the shop. Life was simple, and they did not have many luxuries, but they stayed close as a family. Dan often helped in the store by carrying goods and doing small jobs to support his parents. Even as a child, his large size made him stand out in the community. People in the town noticed him easily, and he became known as a strong and friendly boy. In fact, locals sometimes challenged him in friendly strength competitions because he was so much bigger than other children his age. But even though he was physically strong, he was not aggressive or mean. People who knew him described him as calm, polite, and thoughtful. He liked reading and learning, which made him different from what people might expect from someone of his size. His childhood was shaped by both physical strength and emotional kindness. These early years taught him important values like hard work, respect, and responsibility. Growing up in a small town also gave him a strong connection to simple living and family life, which stayed with him throughout his entire life. Even after he became famous, as Dan Blocker grew older, his life started to take different directions. He attended the Texas Military Institute, where he played football and continued to develop his physical strength. His size and natural athletic ability made him a strong player, and he was respected by both teammates and teachers. Later, he received a scholarship to Sul Ross State University, where he planned to study English while continuing his sports career. At this stage of his life, he still did not know that acting would become his future path. He was focused on education and athletics, just like many young men of his time. However, his personality was always more than just physical strength. He enjoyed literature, learning, and creative thinking. This balance between strength and intelligence made him unique. One of the most important turning points in his early life happened almost by accident. While in college, he helped the drama department move heavy stage equipment. Because of his size, he was asked to take part in a small acting role. At first, he did not take it seriously, but once he stepped on stage, something changed for him. He discovered that performing in front of an audience gave him a feeling he had never experienced before. He enjoyed the energy, attention, and creativity involved in acting. This moment became very important because it slowly changed his direction in life. He later changed his major from English to theater, showing that he was willing to explore new paths. This decision surprised some people around him, but it also showed his openness to new experiences. Even at this stage, he was still not focused on fame or Hollywood success. Instead, he was simply following something that felt meaningful to him at the time. After college, Dan Blocker's life took another major turn when he was drafted into the United States Army during the Korean War. Like many young men of his generation, he had to leave his studies and join the military. This was a serious and difficult time in his life. He went through basic training and was later sent overseas. His size and strength made him suitable for the physical demands of military service, and he was respected by those who served with him. During his time in the Army, he experienced the harsh reality of war. The Korean War was known for being intense and dangerous, and soldiers often faced very difficult conditions. Blocker served in combat situations and saw things that had a deep impact on him. Although he did not often speak about these experiences later in life, people who knew him said that the war changed him in many ways. It made him more serious, more thoughtful, and less interested in violence. Before the war, he enjoyed activities like hunting, but after returning, he decided to avoid firearms completely. This showed how deeply his experiences had affected his thinking. He also developed stronger leadership skills and a greater sense of responsibility. After being discharged in 1952, he returned home with a new outlook on life. The war had taught him that life was fragile and that peace was more important than conflict. These lessons stayed with him for the rest of his life and influenced the way he treated people, his family, and his future career choices. After returning from military service, Dan Blocker started a new chapter in his life. In 1952, he married Dolphia Parker, and this became a very important relationship in his life. Together, they built a family and had 4 children. At this time, Blocker was not focused on fame or acting. Instead, he chose a simple and stable life. He returned to education and completed a master's degree in dramatic arts. Even though he had interest in acting, he decided to work as a teacher so he could support his family. He taught high school English and drama in Texas and later taught younger students in New Mexico. His students remembered him as a kind and patient teacher who cared about helping young people learn. He enjoyed sharing knowledge and encouraging creativity in the classroom. During this period, his life was very different from Hollywood. He lived a quiet and simple life focused on family, education, and responsibility. Even though he was not yet a famous actor, he still continued to explore acting through small performances when he had time. Eventually, the family moved to California, where he continued his studies at UCLA while also beginning to audition for acting roles. To support his family financially, he started taking small parts in television shows. At first, acting was only a side job, but slowly it began to grow into something more important. Even then, his main focus remained his family, and he made sure that stability came first in his life. This balance between work, family, and personal goals defined the stage of his journey. As Dan Blocker became more famous, he began to feel uncomfortable with the attention that came with celebrity life. Fans often approached him in public, which sometimes made him feel stressed. Because of this, he and his family chose to live quietly in a suburban home in California. He wanted his children to grow up in a normal environment, away from Hollywood pressure. Later, he even moved his family to Switzerland for a time to enjoy more privacy. In Europe, he was able to live more peacefully because fewer people recognized him. This move showed how much he valued a simple and private life. Even though he was a major television star, he never let fame control his lifestyle. He preferred spending time with family and close friends rather than attending entertainment industry events. However, during the early 1970s, his health began to decline. He started experiencing medical issues that required surgery. At first, the operation seemed routine and safe, but complications developed afterward. His health quickly worsened, and he passed away at the age of 43 due to a sudden medical condition. His death shocked everyone because it happened so quickly and unexpectedly. Fans, colleagues, and family members were deeply saddened by the loss. It marked the end of an important era in television history. Dan Blocker's death left a deep impact on both his family and the entertainment world. After his passing, his wife Dolphia Blocker made the decision to live a very private life. She avoided media attention and focused on raising their children. She never remarried and stayed away from public interviews or events. This choice showed her desire to protect her family's peace and memory. Dan Blocker's legacy continues through his work on Bonanza, where his character Haas Cartwright is still remembered as one of the most loved figures in television history. His life story is often seen as an example of a man who valued kindness, family, and honesty more than fame or money. Even though his life ended too soon, his influence continues to be remembered by fans around the world. His journey from a small town in Texas to Hollywood success, and finally to a sudden tragic death, remains a powerful reminder of how unpredictable life can be. When Bonanza became a huge success, it changed not only Dan Blocker's life but also the entire television industry. The show was one of the first Western series filmed in color, which made it visually different and more expensive than other programs at the time. At first, the show struggled in ratings and even faced possible cancellation. But after being moved to a better time slot, everything changed. Viewers quickly connected with the Cartwright family story, and the show became a weekly tradition for millions of households. Dan Blocker's role as Haas Cartwright became one of the most important parts of the series. His character brought humor, warmth, and kindness, which balanced the more serious or action-focused parts of the show. Behind the scenes, Blocker was known as a friendly and easygoing person. Cast members often described him as someone who brought a calm and positive energy to the set. He did not act like a typical Hollywood star. Instead, he treated everyone with respect,